Star Wars Rise of Skywalker, the final chapter in the Skywalker legend story, whatever you want to call it. I just saw the movie, and how do I start this? Okay, it started off not as bad as I thought it was going to be. Now I'm gonna tell you right now, there might be some spoilers in this. So if you haven't seen the movie, don't listen to what I'm about to say. I'll tell you, for the first part of this film, the first act, I didn't think it was that bad. The issue I had with the first act was that a lot of stuff starts happening very fast. They have to go from here to there to get this artifact. They have to go from there to here to get this thing. Or they have to go from here to find this, from here to there to find out who this spy is. Or it got a little confusing. I was able to catch up, but through no thanks to the screenplay, but I was able to keep up. Other than the plot seemed like it going all over the place, for the first time, I kind of liked the characters. I felt like Finn and Poe were characters that I related to. I invested in them because I've always thought Finn, up until now, was a two-dimensional character who, and that's the other thing. In the first two movies, I just felt like characters were had no proper motivation. I didn't understand why Finn was so devoted to Rey. Actually, they really still don't explain that. But as such, I saw everything else his character did as a flaw. I just didn't buy into his character. Here, he seems more fully fleshed out. Poe, I enjoyed his character a lot more. He had humor. He was kind of like the Han Solo in this movie. C-3PO, I like that character. Well, that character's a classic. Chewbacca, all these characters, I felt like I wanted to know their story for the first time. But if I'm being honest, and I am, that was pretty much the only thing in the first act to like about this film. But it's strong. You know, good characterization is important. You have to identify with something to like a movie, I think. But it still had its problems. And I already said there was a lot of plot convolutions. But still, again, even though I like Rey, I like the way Daisy Ridley portrays her, I still didn't get a sense of who Rey was in this first part of this movie. Now, I've seen this character in two previous movies. That's a total of roughly 4.5 hours, 2 movies. And I still don't know who she is. Even though I like the character, I like the way Daisy Ridley's portraying the character, I don't know who she is. And I began to get a little indignant that the writers were just using this character, who is the main character, as nothing more than a plot device. It's just not cool that the writers use the main character as just a means of a shock surprise or a twist. I mean, a main character needs to be fully fleshed out from the beginning. None of this, well, you're going to learn who she is. If I have to learn who she is, then I'm not really going to invest all that much. I'm not going to care that much. The fact that I do continue to hang on with Rey is a testament to Daisy Ridley. That's why I care, because the writers just aren't giving me anything, but Daisy is elevating that character. The first act, well, the entire film, has tons of callbacks to the original trilogy, New Hope, Empire Strikes Back, still the best of all the Star Wars films, one of my favorite films of all time, and Return of the Jedi, a lot of callbacks to those films. In the first act, we get to see Lando Calrissian, the real Lando Calrissian, not that bullshit they gave us in Solo. No shade to Donald Glover. But yeah, we get to see Lando back. He delivers a classic line. What does he say? I got a bad feeling about this. We get a scene with the entire crew in another bar, like the bar in Mos Eisley in New Hope. They're constantly trying to reinvent that scene, that bar scene. That's just an iconic scene. So we get a lot of that, and I appreciate it. But somewhere in the second act, the film gets muddy, and then it just goes to complete hell. It's literally in the middle of the second act. There's a scene, and I'm going to get into spoiler territory here. There's a scene where Rey takes off in a ship. I forget. Oh, no, actually, she takes off in a boat. And I guess they call this a skiff. And she goes to get this wayfarer which is a device that, another MacGuffin that came out of nowhere, that will lead her to the true villain of this movie, which is, dun dun dun, Palpatine. Palpatine is back. No explanation. That's another thing about this trilogy. There's no explanation, no motivation for any of the characters. We learn that Palpatine created Snoke. That's all we get. He created Snoke. That's it. Okay. Palpatine has been ruling or commanding or motivating everything that we've seen behind the scenes all this time. So they retcon a lot of stuff, right? Even though we've been seeing Force ghosts all through this franchise, so we're led to believe that when a Jedi or Sith dies, well, actually, just when a Jedi dies, they become a ghost, a Force ghost. Well, Palpatine says that all of the Sith, I guess that means Sidious, Darth Maul, any others, I don't think General Grievous was a Sith, no. But any of the Sith Lords that were extinguished or eliminated, they somehow channel into him. So he has all of their spirits in him. When did that become part of canon? How is it that we've never heard of this? How is it that none of the Jedi or any of the Sith have mentioned this? I know someone's going to come at me talking about, well, Q, you don't understand, you're old, you didn't get the clues, you didn't get the hints, they told you this in one movie or this or that, it's in the books, blah, blah, blah. I'm calling bull. It's like the writers just wrote whatever they needed to get to the end. This movie at this point should have just been called Deus Ex Machina Wars, because everything happens, everything falls into place, things just appear, situations just happen that have no explanation and make no sense. Case in point, and again, this is a spoiler, turn this off if you haven't seen it. When they introduce Palpatine, they finally reveal who Rey is, and it's a moment where you're like, that's it? That's it. It's basically a situation that just is a ripoff or a rehash of Empire Strikes Back, where Luke learns that Darth Vader is his father. Here, the big thing about who Rey is this Palpatine's granddaughter. She's Palpatine's granddaughter. Who the f*** cares? And here's his ultimate plan. He wants to kidnap Rey from Rey's dad, who is his son, who I guess has no force powers at all. That makes sense, right? Okay. But Rey has a ton of them. And he needs her to kill him, strike him down, so that he can transfer his life force into her for whatever reason, so he can live again and sit on the throne. But he was able to bring himself back to life. So why does he need her? Okay. And to accent that point, after she refuses to do it, he basically just steals her life force and puts it into him. And then he becomes almost all-powerful. So it's like, well, what was the point? What plan is this? It makes no sense. Then there's Kylo Ren, another character who seems totally pointless after the first two movies. Because, and you could arguably say he has a moment like Darth Vader, which we saw at the end of Return of the Jedi, which worked for me for some reason, where Vader ultimately turns back to the good side. But the reason it worked for me is because he saw his son being tortured. Now, maybe that's not enough to turn Darth Vader back, but it surely works better than Kylo Ren, who turns back to the good side in this film because Rey lays her hands on him, and in a scene that reveals force powers we've never seen before. We saw them on The Mandalorian the night before this film was released, but she touches him and he gets healed. Yeah, you heard that right. They get into a lightsaber duel, which seems pointless. Rey and Kylo do. And she stabs him through the midsection with her lightsaber. And then she has a attack of conscience and heals him by just putting her hands on his wound. We've never seen that before. Like I said, I saw it on The Mandalorian a couple nights ago, and I gave it a side eye there when Baby Yoda did it. But we see it here. And then for whatever reason, Kylo Ren has an epiphany. And then we have another one of those gotcha moments. Of course, it was great to see Harrison Ford on screen, but he comes back as Han Solo, as I don't know, he's not a ghost, not a Force ghost. Well, maybe he was, because they don't really define anything in this film. But he comes back in a vision for whatever reason. And that makes Kylo Ren turn good, okay? Again, it's not like Darth Vader seeing his son, a Jedi, a fellow Jedi, being tortured, which I can suspend disbelief that Darth Vader would turn back to the good side. But this, the girl touched me, I'm gonna be good now. Out of here. It just seemed like the writers, after in the middle act, moving forward, they just wrote whatever they needed to write strictly out of convenience. So one of your lead actresses unfortunately passes away during the filming. So what you do is you write any type of bullshit scene with no real thought or sense of plausibility to explain why we don't see that character anymore. Now, they do that, and there is a nice send-off. I appreciated that, but the solution to that problem was really lazy. You introduce new characters without resolving characters that you introduced in previous movies. Rose Tico, she has maybe 5 lines in this movie. They don't establish or move forward her relationship with Finn, even though we saw them kiss, or well, she kissed him in the last film. But then we introduced a potentially new love interest for Finn, and they don't develop that either. No, goes nowhere. That character goes nowhere. I'm speaking of the character, the black female character with the British accent. I don't think they even give her a name. What was the point of that character? I mean, I liked her, but they didn't do anything with her. That character could have easily have been Rose, whom we know something about. Why introduce new characters when you haven't worked with all the characters you have? I already talked about how Ren goes back to the good side. It was almost as implausible as Anakin turning to the dark side. The reasons they motivated him to turn to the dark side, just as ridiculous and just as shallow. You have the plot revealing that Palpatine somehow, I mean, I don't know what it is with Star Wars, and Star Wars isn't the only film guilty of this, but how the bad guys just managed to create multitudes and multitudes of resources and infrastructure. We have a scene where Palpatine reveals that he has what looks like 100 Star Destroyers that cover out the sky, entire sky on this planet. How was he able to do all that? How did he do all that? How did he accomplish that? Who built all those ships? We have yet again a battle scene that doesn't involve a Death Star, but it involves these hundreds of Star Destroyers that I previously mentioned, which all have planet-killing laser cannons on them. So basically, you've got a multitude of Death Stars now. And as is always the case, and we've seen it in Star Wars in the past, when you take out the one lead ship or the one lead source, everything else just goes out for whatever reason. Everything else just stops working. So yeah, we get another scene where we see X-Wings and Rebel ships fighting TIE fighters. It's always going to come down to that in Star Wars, isn't it? We also get Lando leading the rescue team, or the cavalry, coming in at the last hour. You know, how is it that the First Order in the first 2 films were able to amass such power, and then at the last minute, all of these ships, I mean, literally, the screen was filled at the last minute with rebel ships, or people who were willing to fight, as if none of these people were willing to fight before, because what, they didn't know the First Order was building up power? So you have Lando coming in with literally thousands of ships at the very last minute. Well, to put it in a word, it was kind of like Han Solo coming back in A New Hope. Yeehaw! That kind of thing with the Millennium Falcon. And it was a little bit of Endgame, you know, with Black Panther telling Cap, on your left, and all of a sudden, all the heroes appear. That worked in Endgame. Here, it didn't work at all. It was just stupid. It was Deus Ex Machina to the 10th degree. In Palpatine's throne room, all of a sudden, out of the blue, we see literally hundreds upon hundreds of hooded figures sitting in a theater, in an arena. And I'm like, who are these people? Where did they come from? Are these all Sith? Where have all these Sith been? What have they been doing? It's just like throwing shit against the wall. We introduced new force powers in this film. We remember how Luke Skywalker projected himself onto that salt planet, I forget the name of it, where he was fighting Ren, but it was a hologram or whatever. Okay, so Ren seemed surprised by that. He wasn't aware of that. But now in this film, he does it like no problem. He does it in at least 2 or 3 scenes. He does it with Rey. He projects himself in Rey's environment, and he also manages to bring Rey into his environment somehow. Not only that, but now the Force can allow you to, I guess, teleport things from one environment to another. There's a scene where Kylo grabs a necklace off of Rey's neck while they're in 2 different locations. And there's a scene in the final battle where Rey manages to hand Kylo a lightsaber while they're in 2 different locations. It's dope, but it's just amazing how, they needed to make that happen. I'm talking about the writers. They needed to make that happen, so they just said, okay, this is part of the Force as well. It's just funny because ever since the original Star Wars, which is now Star Wars Episode 4, A New Hope, I remember the scene where Darth Vader says to, I forget the character's name, but he says, do not underestimate the Force. This Death Star is puny when compared to the power of the Force. And ever since 1977 up until the prequels, right? I've always said, the Jedi are dope, don't get me wrong, but I'm not seeing what Darth Vader said in terms of the Force being more powerful than a Death Star that can destroy a planet. Well, I guess in this last film, I don't know if it's just a shame because we're seeing it now, right? If we had seen it back then, I could have suspended disbelief for all the crap I saw them do with the Force in this movie. But since this is the first time they're displaying any of these powers which, I would have expected to see prior to now, it just comes off as completely contrived. Here's another thing that I never knew about the Force. Now, I knew the Force was rumored to be able, the dark side of the Force was rumored to be able to bring people back from death or create life. So clearly Palpatine did that, which is why we see him in this film, which is just so unnecessary. It just seemed like it was thrown in there like for old time's sake, whatever. Put Palpatine in the movie. People will love that. And that's the only reason they put him in the movie. But to my point, I just found it completely implausible that Kylo Ren was able to bring Rey back to life after she sacrifices herself to stop Palpatine. He's able to lay hands on her and bring her back from the dead. I'm not making that up. Okay? Now, if Jedi or Sith, or if the Force allows you to do that, why didn't Yoda come back? Why didn't Qui-Gon Jinn come back from death? Why didn't Darth Maul come back from death? Why didn't Darth Vader come back from death? Why didn't Luke come back from death? Why didn't Obi-Wan come back from death? You see what happens when you retcon shit? Now, I'm going to go to a dark place here. I want to go to some racial politics. I can't help myself. So throughout the first and second film, we saw Finn, a black man, screaming and hollering for Rey, a white woman. Now, I'm not that type of person. I'm just observing these things, okay? There was never any motivation for Finn to be so strung out over Rey. And even though he was, Rey puts him immediately into the friend zone. Okay, one might raise an eyebrow, particularly as a black man, might raise an eyebrow. So I was led to believe all this time that, okay, well, maybe Rey is just an asexual being. The Jedi are not supposed to have relationships, right? But the second that Kylo Ren, who has bullied, harassed, exhibited toxic masculinity, that's the term we use nowadays, assaulted Rey multiple times, okay? Now, granted, he brought her back from the dead, all right? You know, if you're Rey, you might think he brought me back from the dead to further use me as an instrument, a tool to his possibly dark means. That even though he helped me out in defeating Palpatine, he may still have ulterior motives. What does she do when she comes back? She kisses him squarely on the mouth. No problem, no hesitation. Yet we had Finn, who took a lightsaber up the ass for this woman, protecting her when she needed help. What's he get? I will return, my friend, and a kiss on the forehead. F*** out of here. But wait a minute. Finn doesn't get off the hook either. What does he do at the end of the film when the Empire, or the Final Order, whatever the hell they're called now, what does he do when everyone's hooking up? We even have a lesbian couple kissing, and that's cool. That's great. Got no problem with that. But what do we have one of the lead black men doing at the end of the film? Looking for Rey, who doesn't want him. Clearly doesn't want him, right? So what does he do? He turns his back on Rose Tico, a woman of color, Asian woman, and he turns his back on the black Afro-Brit female who was do or die with him, ride or die with him. She risked her life with him fighting the Empire. But no, he doesn't go to either of them. He hunts down Rey and Poe. And I'm like, huh? I just think that Star Wars as a whole in general has a problem writing fully realized black men. I don't usually like to bring up race that often in my reviews, but it's just, it can't be avoided. It's almost like there was two sets of writers on this film. The first set of writers who were genuine to Star Wars, tried to be genuine to Star Wars, tried to write the characters fully fleshed out, which I think they were successful for the most part. But then towards the end, it was like a whole new set of writers came in, writers that really had no clue about how to craft a story arc. So basically what I'm saying is they hired the writers of Star Trek Discovery Season 2. It was the same type of writing where just anything is available. You know, there's no explanation for thousands of Star Destroyers, no explanation for thousands of Sith Lords, which in of themselves, it seems like with all of that, Palpatine could have accomplished his goal. But yet, we have to somehow connect him with Rey. It just made no sense. Why does he have to go through all that with Rey when he has all this infrastructure already? But, you know, that's called logic. It doesn't matter. We don't need logic. We just need to make sure the check cleared. I was prepared to give this movie 3 out of 5 reels. And for me, 3 reels is a good movie. But as it went along, and it went along, and it went along, I had to take a reel away. So this is 2 reels out of 5. And that's being nice. That means it was fair. 1 reel is poor. No reels is just god awful. Don't even go see it. There you have it. Rise of Skywalker. I know it's going to make tons of money. And even though, as Palpatine said, that he's in command of the Final Order, and this is the end of the Skywalker saga, that will be determined once the bean counters have counted up and tallied up all of the box office. We may very well see some more Luke Force Ghost. All right, there you have it. That's the martini.